So today we're going to be talking a little bit about Caitlin Clark. And Stephanie White has had basically a interview with it's sports media with Richard Deitch. I probably mispronounced that. But so Stephanie White has been on this podcast. We're going to be reacting to some of the clips. And this is Stephanie White talking about areas of improvement they're focusing on with Caitlin Clark. Obviously, this is a clip that was taken out by the Ken Swift Twitter account. So let's take a listen.
You have seen this in the WNBA. One of the things that always happens with great players, from year one to year two, they always make a jump. And usually when it comes to the W, like they get stronger. And like they're just like, you cannot knock them around anymore.
And yeah, obviously we've seen with Caitlin Clark how much bigger Caitlin Clark has gotten physically over the last while.
Like a piñata that a lot of rookies sort of get in their first year. So my question for you is, like, one, is Caitlin Clark stronger, or do you expect her to get stronger? And two, like, what's realistic, like, in terms of from a great first year to now second year in the league where, you know, it's not as new anymore, right? And you sort of know how the league plays, if nothing else.
Yes, she is stronger, first and foremost. And again, she's got a lot of self-awareness. And, you know, she figured that out, you know, right away. Like, I need to get stronger. I can't get knocked around as much. And so she's done a great job of getting in the weight room and really focusing on her areas that she needs to focus on in terms of strength, in terms of, low center of gravity, time under tension, like all of those things. You know, I think the next step is efficiency. Right? Like not so many turnovers, higher field goal percentages. She knows what's coming. I mean,
Caitlin, ironically enough, I hate the phrase less turnovers, because if you guys didn't watch the playoffs, Caitlin Clark was played off the ball in game 1 against the Connecticut Sun. She was garbage. She was absolutely garbage. Look, she wasn't good in the first place. The game plan of Christy Sides to put the ball in Kelsey Mitchell's hands and of Caitlin Clark standing there and you being a spot-up shooter was the dumbest thing ever. And at the end of the game, Caitlin Clark goes, well, at least my turnovers were not high. And I'm like, are you, like, that's like the dumbest logic in the world, where it's like, yeah, obviously if your high-volume point guard has the ball in her hands, less her turnovers are going to be down. Stephanie White's like, oh, we need to focus on getting that turnover number down. It's like, no, you need to focus on getting turnover rate down. The turnover number doesn't matter. Her turnover rate wasn't good, by the way. Her turnover number was historically bad because she had a historically high ball, like, amount of passes she was given, like amount of time she had the ball in her hand. And towards the end of the year, her live ball turnovers went down very low. Like a lot of, and then you also have to take into account dead ball turnovers and which type of turnovers are more costly. Like, obviously people are talking about turnovers, but like a turnover that is you trying to throw a pass that if it had gone through as a guaranteed bucket leading to a half-court offense for them is very different than getting stripped at the halfway line for an open layup. I hate the but turnovers number because there is context to turnovers. That's not saying Caitlin Clark didn't turn the ball over a bit too much, especially early in the year. But ironically, the turnover numbers did not tell the full story about her turnovers. There were games where she committed 9 turnovers, where 7 of them were quote-unquote good turnovers, 2 of them were bad, and there was a game where she committed 5 turnovers and gave up 5 freaking buckets from the 5 turnovers. I hate people saying turnover number.
You saw that throughout the course of last year. I remember sitting in a press conference about midway through the season and just,
By the way, I actually never mind Prime. 30 bottles of this for 30 quid. Everyone's trying to get rid of it. Every company bought way too much. Obviously, you don't put too much stock in something when it's just all hype and never going to last, which people thought was going to happen with her, Caitlin Clark. People thought she was going to be Prime. Turns out she's freaking Gatorade. She's inevitable, and she's there for good.
Continuing to get asked about Caitlin Clark and Indiana, and I'm like, guys, like, just relax. Like, they're going to figure it out. They've got to learn how to play together. She's thrown into this league right away, and she's going to figure it out. And she did. She did. And she's going to see all kinds of coverages. She's going to see all kinds of matchups. And so for us, working on how to become a little bit more efficient, and whether that's angles of attack, not avoiding, contact, how we get by people, different cadences and dribbling and different.
And thankfully she's explaining, it's like, okay, what we do in certain situations, what we do from different looks. which obviously will cut down on the turnover number, and it will also cut down on the bad turnovers. I remember Christy Sides had like the perfect offense to stop the blitz, and she just stopped running it. Because I don't think she realized why. When she ran the double stat, they almost set up in a horn set, but she came from the side and she kind of ran the double screen. So it meant that they couldn't blitz the second screen, because if they blitzed the second screen, it was like a wide. They didn't even have to go in a short roll. They would have to blitz the second screen. If they were looking to blitz second screen, she just turned the corner and go to the basket. So it was a really tough thing, and they almost forced the switches, and she just stopped running it. But at least with Chrissy's or with Stephanie White, you're hearing, okay, yeah, we're going to be looking and doing more, getting her more looks, which is good, and like working on different ways. And you want Caitlin Clark, if she is off the ball, to obviously not just be running off pin downs, because that was all Stephanie White knew how to do. Not Stephanie White, sorry. All Christy Size knew how to do.
Different cadences and footwork and different finishes around the rim. Obviously, our
Hopefully she uses her left hand.
job as a franchise, putting more pieces around her to be able to give. I mean, how do you guard when you've got 5 people on the floor that can shoot the ball? And then it becomes right. Then it becomes just experience. I think the challenge is when you're not playing in the off season, when you're just training in the off season, then it's rhythm and timing early, right? And then it's, there's a difference in how you catch the ball when you're training one-on-one versus how you catch the ball when we're training and when we're playing in a pickup game. There's a difference in game shape and basketball shape, not just from a conditioning standpoint, but from a rhythm and timing standpoint. So that becomes the next challenge. But getting more efficient in everything that we do, for us, moving her off the ball a little bit more so she's not getting worn out in game, just handling the ball 94 feet.
I agree.
And then
the problem with the Indiana Fever, with moving her off the ball, is their roster construction. I don't hate having Caitlin Clark off the ball. I just thought if you were going to play Caitlin Clark between on the ball and off the ball, you would have Grace Berger in your team. Sydney Colson, fair enough, but it's like, how many minutes do we expect Sydney Colson to play? Or how few minutes do we expect Caitlin Clark to be playing off the ball if Sydney Colson's there? So, yeah, it is an interesting thing to think with her off the ball, like how that's going to be happening. Because I do think we saw with like Stephanie White with Connecticut how much off the ball movement they ran, how many different types of cuts. They kind of ran almost flex cuts. And basically in the playoffs, if you watched, it was literally Alyssa Thomas was just dribbling at the free throw line. And this is almost all they ran when they were effective. Bree Jones would DeWanna Bonner would be in the corner. Bree Jones would go and set the screen for DeWanna Bonner, would meet her, and DeWanna Bonner would come off it almost like a flex cut, and it's a layup half the time. Because they were so bad off the ball. And then sometimes they double the cutter, shoot her open in the corner. Obviously, Bree Jones is not that, but like that's how poor the Fever were on defense. And that's all the freaking Connecticut Sun had to run. That's all they had to do was run in transition and run like flex screens almost. So yeah, it is a very interesting thing with Caitlin Clark for me anyway, because I'm like, she can be very effective off the ball. But Christy Sides was like, we need to run more plays to get Caitlin off the ball. And I was just like, every play does not have to be a quick hitter pin down. Her plays were literally, every one of her plays were all the same. If she started on the left hand side of the floor, she was coming off a pin down screen, and then she would try to like almost flare off the pin down. She wasn't comfortable curling to her right. And that was happening no matter what. If she passed and cut, every single time she would pass, cut through, set the screen for Aaliyah Boston, the post up. They never looked for the post up. And then whoever the top guard was on top would come in. Whoever the guard that filled in the top would come down, set the screen, and Caitlin Clark would just come off that and try to shoot. And then if she caught the ball on the right hand side of the floor, the ball got past the other side and she'd come off a pin down. Like that's literally it. They're the 3 plays. They ran 3 plays. A couple of good like kind of out of timeout plays where she got one, was it against, I can't remember who it was against, like where she came off like a flare screen, the ball was thrown into the space, like came off a really nice flare screen at one stage. Might have been the Mystics maybe in a game they lost. She had, or was it against the Liberty? She had a really good one. But like Christy Sides, I will give it to her. Her out of timeout plays were good. But like obviously with the playing Caitlin off the ball, it's something that, look, she's obviously can do, but you do need a good coach. You don't want to play her off the ball like Christy Sides is playing her off the ball.
Not getting worn out in game, just handling the ball 94 feet. And then we're challenging her on the defensive end of the floor as well, like being a better defender. The best that for us as an opponent, you want to attack a good offensive player by making him play on the defensive end, putting him through the ringer. So being a better defender, and I think being more creative as a.
And I do think that Caitlin Clark does have it in her to be an average defender. I don't think she'll ever be a good defender. I think she's she can get to be an average defender. I'm not sure she'll ever be an above average off the ball defender. I just think her ability to just fight through and navigate screens is not good, and I'm not sure that's something you can teach. I think that's sometimes something like a you are, you aren't, like how to just body. I don't even know what way to describe it, but I do think it's an interesting one. But at the same time, like, I do think she will be an average defender. Look, I still have her as my favorite for MVP next year. I think it's between her and Nafisa Collier. But still, it's a very interesting one here with Caitlin Clark, and to hear that she is looking to play her off the ball, which is good, because Caitlin Clark cannot play with that high usage for another season. So anyway, I'll see you guys.